Today we're gonna be looking at 2008's Igor, coming to us from none other than the director of the Emoji Movie. Oh god, here we go. Does anyone remember this one? Probably not, I never noticed it, and it was a massive flop, which is a shame to say because they actually brought out a whole tie-in video game for it and everything. It was an element of its time, because yeah, we're in that era of a movie. At most, I maybe half remember seeing the trailer for this in cinemas before watching, WALL-E, one of Pixar's absolute greatest. And that's especially interesting because now looking back at Igor's animation quality, probably wasn't the best choice of movie to slap your trailer ahead of. I appreciate that this was coming from a smaller studio, but imagine seeing this before watching what is perhaps Pixar's most stellar movies. No thanks. And like many kids, I had no awareness of the character or his connection to Frankenstein. I mean, you wouldn't from this movie because he's called Dr. Lichtenstein here. Honestly, my 11-year-old brain probably would have thought this was some sort of Hunchback of Notre Dame thing. I mean, look at him. If Illumination tackled Quasimodo's character design, this is probably what they'd do. But no, this was absolutely not Illumination behind this. It was big old lion-faced MGM, owners of the Addams Family reboot. And this was before they were bought by Amazon. And while MGM does have all sorts of weird animation histories which I'd love to go through in another more dedicated video, the interesting people attached to this movie doesn't stop there because Igor has the proud status of being the first feature-length animated movie to be entirely financed by private equity, completely funded behind closed doors with Exodus Film Group, which shows in how they finished the animation because they pulled an Illumination, got it finished cheaply by both Sparks Animation in France and what is simply described as a facility in Vietnam. Well, this all sounds completely trustworthy. Nothing dodgy happened making this movie at all. It was also distributed internationally by the oh god, yeah. As I said off the top, the movie was some of the early works from the Emoji Movie director, Tony Leondis, who has not worked since that aforementioned movie. Now, considering this is a movie that genuinely seems like one that not a lot of people have seen, critically panned for ripping off the art style of both Nightmare Before Christmas and Tim Burton's work in general. This is the terrible Tim Burton Rip-Off.
Sunshine and ravioli. Nice weather we're having, huh?
Now, the first 2 minutes they have Igor just explain the story,
And our people became poor.
and I'm afraid the theme of telling instead of showing is going to remain strong with this one. We couldn't wait for the subsequent 10 minutes to learn what Igor's core aspirations are. We need to jam it into a huge breakdown about the wider world, where we're introduced to the idyllic kingdom of malaria. What? Is that seriously the name they went with? The disease that kills millions of people every year. Still, that's what they called it. Alright. And immediately we get our first preview of truly how much this movie has ripped off Tim Burton's style, because the MO with this animation is recreating the look of those iconic Burton stop-motion puppets in a low-budget CGI render. And it shows. Just wait until you see one of the particular characters where it's no longer even up for debate. We get the lowdown on the concept of this world, which is an interesting one to be fair. So, in the various iterations of Frankenstein, Igor is a singular character, the henchman of Dr. Frankenstein. However, in this world, Igors are a race of people who serve a whole community of evil scientists who treat them like brainless idiot servants. And they don't get paid for this, so I guess it's just slavery. And to be fair, that is an original take on the Frankenstein lore. So is the fact that the Igor telling the story is actually an intelligent Igor with ideas of his own, as yet another twist on the dim-witted servant from the source material.
My name's Igor. I've got a hunch on my back. What's my name gonna be? Kevin?
I don't know if kids would get all of that subtext, but I guess this was going for a kids will have fun, parents will get what we're going for kind of jobby. Now, we learned that malaria has been thrown into a never-ending storm, but have somehow saved themselves through evil inventions. Yeah, so they're gonna blackmail the rest of the world by creating indestructible forces for evil. It's a whole thing. And to be fair, that initial premise I can get behind. That's a kinda cool idea. The execution, not so much. What starts out as a storybook-style setup of the world turns into Igor just straight up telling us about how he likes inventing and what he wants to do in this movie. Something that would have been a lot more interesting. We actually saw him making the inventions and showing us that's who he is.
And this new one is gonna be the one that proves that I'm not just another
Igor! We also don't need him to explain what his life is like with Dr. Glitchenstein because that's all in the subsequent scene. Anyway, after the opening narration makes sure that we have nothing left to learn about Igor for most of the movie, we go to the Glitchenstein laboratory. This is also where we learned that not only is the design work unoriginal, but the way it is animated, incredibly bad. This is Nightmare Before Christmas animated by the Hoodwinked team bad. And to be fair, that's kind of exactly what it is. Also, it doesn't always look terrible in this movie. Some scenes look pretty decent, but it's not often, and the movement of Dr. Glitchenstein proves that. I guess that's what happens when you do cheap outsourcing to 2 different countries. DreamWorks, I hope you're paying attention. And almost as wooden as the animation is the voice acting as well. Here we get John Cleese just reading off the page from the sounds of it. Listen to this.
What did you say?
And it's such a weird addition, as initially he's completely phoning it in, but whenever he gets excited, he goes just completely unhinged.
I don't want to hear your toilet memoirs, you cretin!
I think, if anything, this is clearly poor direction, if anything. Mainly because the vocals and energy of the character animation just don't line up at all. As for Igor himself, they go for the whole, he only puts on the weird voice when he's around the master approach.
Sorry, master.
It'd be funny if I hadn't seen this take a million times. You have a character associated with an over-the-top, ridiculous voice. They put the voice on for the punters before the celebrity voice actor uses their normal, recognizable voice for the rest of the movie. Oh, great.
That was the first time he was right all day.
To be fair, this came out 15 years before Chris Pratt in the Mario movie, so maybe this was more original at the time. And it also fits the character a little bit better, as he's playing the idiot he's supposed to be when he is in fact secretly a genius. Well, that's the premise anyway, him being a genius. I don't think the unfolding story quite backs it up with some of his choices later, but we'll get there. Ugh, Glitchenstein's animation's so cursed, I love it.
Are you sure you don't mean 21 gigawatts?
You're correcting me? Strike!
And of course, I think the 21 gigawatts line's meant to be a reference to 1.21 gigawatts from Back to the Future, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they just got the number wrong. And if it is an intended reference, it's certainly not the last time this movie leans into the post-Shrek pop culture references. Glitchenstein then leaves, which can only mean one thing. We get to meet all the annoying side characters we'll be stuck with for the rest of the movie. It's an interesting choice, and don't worry, the dialogue will make sure to immediately explain them away as well. I mean, this rabbit's face kinda just explains it all to me.
I made him immortal.
Oh great, and we're stuck with him. After learning about a rabbit that wants to die, but literally cannot, then we have this brain turning up, giving us some serious Fallout vibes. And now the main central trio are here, ready to take on the world. What is the plan?
I could be one of the greatest evil scientists malaria has ever seen.
No, Bill Gates already took that one. Calm down, Igor. That guy's actually tackling malaria. Again, why did they call it that? We then go to meet the villains of the piece and seeing more bootleg Tim Burton designs on the way. As for the villain himself, it's actually...
You're too kind, and I'm not.
Eddie Izzard again? Apparently I'm on a marathon in this and The Wild, which was the last terrible we did. Eddie, why did you do all these terrible movies? Money, fair enough.
Your whole lab is fake.
Oh look, it's not a lab, it's a TARDIS? Sorry, that's my Britishness showing. There's more dialogue completely spelling their motivations in the most A to B way you possibly could. You know how it is. Oh, I guess we still gotta lower our expectations. That's the second worst German stereotype you could have gone with. And then just as quickly, we go back to the laboratory where Dr. Glitchenstein is finally putting his invention into motion. Until...
The rock is going to...
Ah, another Cleese character killed off in the opening 20 minutes. See also Shrek the Third. And I guess Shrek Forever After in a way as well. This scene, as much as we skimmed over it, was massively spread out as Igor made multiple warnings that this was going to happen and then got shot down for it, and now here we are. Despite his opening 20-minute existence and death, he still gets second billing in the credits, because of course he does.
And he doesn't have to open that door for anyone.
Open for the king!
Except for the king.
I kind of like that line. It also introduces perhaps the most egregious Nightmare Before Christmas ripoff of the bunch. The king is just the mayor from Halloween Town in both design and personality. I do like the fact he looks a bit like a cockroach matching the character, but that's all I'm giving it because that is the same character design choice. It's almost like the cockroach praise is for Tim Burton himself. The rest of the movie's look could be argued as maybe a lazy homage, but there is no subtlety at all with this guy at all, and let's be honest, they all knew what they were doing throughout.
No evil scientist has ever been able to create life!
Really? You're telling me this entire society of evil scientists are all virgins? Yeah, I can believe it. They've never been able to create life.
The greatest evil invention of all time.
Subtle dialogue.
And it's your job to make sure nothing happens to Glickenstein.
That's an interesting sentence when the character has no idea that there's a problem in the first place, huh? You know, it's this kind of thing where there's just no sense of subtext or subtlety in any of the dialogue. It's a classic in a terrible movie. It's so on the nose in every direction. Also, I get the king is probably designed to have an Elvis-style costume, but to me, I'm just getting Metro Man.
Hey, Metro City.
And the Nightmare Mayor, of course. Man, why didn't they just call the character the Nightmare? Like, come on, that makes so much more sense. I'm getting distracted, which is an easy feat with this movie. Igor and the others are left with the conundrum that they need to create the evil invention. Now Glickenstein's no longer available to do so. Cue Igor standing in the window, creating that Hunchback of Notre Dame motif.
I sometimes come down here to think.
So this implies that the others didn't know about this secret bit? Don't they, like, live with him? Ah, forget about it.
I know, right? And she's not even done yet.
God damn it, why do I like this joke as well? How many writers are on this movie? I like the second or third one, it sounds like. The person that adds in the filler stuff. Oh, actually, that might explain it. So, part of that occasional flair may just be due to this movie being the first feature-length screenplay by Chris McKenna. Now, clearly, this may not be his greatest work, but his eye for jokes would lead him on to Community and the Mindy Project in the future. And as for movies, after this absolute disaster, he'd go on to write for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not only does he have additional script credits on Winter Soldier, but he was one of the main writers for all 3 MCU Spider-Man movies, not to mention the Lego Batman movie and the Jumanji reboot. This guy basically wrote half the 2010s. So I'm gonna put any praises I have for this movie into an accolade for them. Even if the fact still remains that, above all those movies, his first listed movie is, in fact, Igor. We then get to see the second instance of the rabbit's Deadpool powers before they begin assembling the creature.
The evil bone.
I shall refrain from any obvious jokes at this point.
You've seen a lot of brains. Mine's bigger than average, right?
This movie has plenty of those as it is. Huh, another Fallout type moment. I'm calling it now. Fallout ripped off Igor. You can't convince me otherwise. Where's the nuke? Also, these guys definitely have a Monsters vs. Aliens vibe to me. Does anyone else read that? They're even just about to introduce a Ginormica-type character entering the fray as well. The timelines don't line up, though. But first, we need to hit the classic beats of things seemingly not working, followed by the lead character proclaiming what a failure he is.
I'm a failure. I'm an Igor.
Give it a second, man. And of course, as we know from other instances of this generically structured story beat that they always redo in terrible movies, he hasn't in fact failed.
May I suggest?
Behind you!
It was just a suggestion.
That is 3 good jokes we've had now from this movie. All the good lines are focused on this bloody rabbit, no one else. I love this rabbit, apparently. Also, every now and again, they just straight up stop animating characters when they're not speaking. Again, the animation's terrible, and I love it for that. And honestly, I think this kind of works for the rabbit here in his depressed expression. He's so clearly done with his immortality and having to exist in this god-awful movie. Why would he move when he doesn't have to? I can just imagine him standing there, static in the void of space as the entire Earth implodes and becomes a red giant, and then all of our universe crushes into a single pixel. But there he still is, just floating, unanimated, unmoving, unbothered. But anyway, moving on from the rabbit,
I created life.
they then spend a lot of time on the blind orphans gag.
Home for blind orphans. He's killing blind orphans. Blind orphans?
Going into a whole new territory of punching down that it seems so ridiculous that maybe it's okay again? I don't know about that.
Wonder what diabolical deed she has planned next. Piggyback rides?
The experiment is successful, and as they take her back to the castle, we have another cutscene to the villains. Completely skippable. It becomes apparent pretty quickly that the cutaways to the villains don't impact the main characters until much later, which is why they're kind of just thrown in for these very brief cutaways to them, so it's not so jarring when they're more important later. But for the most part, this is kind of like a one-plot story. We just need to follow Igor the entire time. These guys never really split up. It's kind of like an obligatory check-in, which is why there's not a very good flow for this movie.
Eva.
What?
No, surely not. Not in the same year as Wall-E, guys.
What?
Come on.
Eva.
Evil!
Eva.
They then come to the conclusion that they need to activate her evil bone by making her do one evil thing. And so they then take the neck for days to get her evil bone going. And to be fair, I quite like them using the old-timey footage for the film. Lilo and Stitch did it better, but still.
I feel like I'm sending my kid off to school for the first time. You know, to learn how to murder.
That's That's exactly what you're doing. Following that, we then get James Lipton and Inside the Actors Studio pop up, which leads Eva to come out. And better still, with every baseline I'm an actor joke in the book. Vocal exercise, the it factor, time for my elocution exercises. You can't learn that, you just have to be born with it. They go through all of them. Also, now she can speak like a person. I bet he falls in love with her by the end. What do you think? Male protagonist and now a female one?
Oh, sorry. I thought we were counting off all your failures.
This tier of movie cannot get through its runtime without some sort of stitched together romance by the end. It's just how they go. Literally in this case, stitched together.
Practice poses for the red carpet, become an environmentalist.
Alright, some proper naughties global warming jokes going on here as well, huh? From this point, we then go into a chase sequence with the villains, just to keep them relevant to the story, and I'm pretty sure you could cut this chase out and the story would still completely make sense. That being said, when it comes to the actual shot, the camera work, if you can call it that, works surprisingly well in this scene. Like, it's filmed like it's all one shot, and it's surprisingly incredible, as if this was meant to be the demo for the entire movie, and only here did they actually put in some good effort and execution. But it's very weird to experience eye candy when you've already been bored out of your mind for the first however long it's been of this movie. It's a very weird whiplash. Still, they try and capture them by shrinking them. It doesn't work and it backfires on the villains. The main characters ending up hanging off a cliff. You know how it goes.
Hey, I can see my room from here.
Hey there, you're halfway through this video, so come along and subscribe if you're interested in more terrible movies. We've got loads covered in the past and loads coming up in the future. And give us suggestions in the comments or our Discord server. Cheers, and on to the rest of it.
This would be the right time to curb your suicidal tendencies.
Wow, not even hinting anymore. We're just gonna go right to the suicide direct reference now? This is a movie, and there is some dialogue. And it continues.
You still have the biggest mouth in malaria.
Again, that title goes to Bill Gates. Anyway, you know how it goes. They get saved off the cliff, they escape the villains.
You saved my life.
As an actor, I feel things very deeply.
There we go. The obligatory romantic chemistry begins. Nothing was gonna stop this movie from marrying off one of only 2 female characters, the other being the Eddie Izzard villain's side piece who he just called a big mouth. I'm sure they're not gonna do anything worse for the one other female character. Feminism. This is 2008.
The only thing killed here is my dream.
Oh god, he's stuffed full with self-pity now, huh? Not gonna lie, for someone who looks so sympathetic in the advertising, Igor is a bit of a dick in this movie. He's constantly trying to manipulate Eva to do what he wants. I mean, I guess he is meant to be evil scientist, but even as a good guy, it's not great.
In the biggest play to hit malaria since...
The desperate hunchback who grasped at straws?
Again, why does the rabbit exclusively have all the good dialogue? Maybe Steve Buscemi ad-libbed, who knows? Also, yes, it's Steve Buscemi. Eva then reveals that she'd like to play Annie, which the others seem to have full awareness of.
So many terrific girls got their start playing Annie.
What is this universe? They have Annie and Inside the Actors Studios, but they otherwise live in a German 19th century type village? It's that Shrek pop culture ability, I guess, but with none of the real adaptation. They're just directly in there.
I think I just wet myself.
Great. My favorite kind of humor. Can we go back to the rabbit, please? He's clearly the better of the two. Igor then continues to manipulate Eva into rehearsing destruction of all things to meet his selfish ends. She's meant to be evil life after all, not just life. However, then the romantic scores begin as they shoehorn the shipping of these two, because lying to and manipulating her is the best foundation for a relationship that's mandated for the cinema.
Then you can be my number 2 friend.
Well, who's your number 1 friend?
See, you're jealous.
We then go to a TV interview with none other than the Invisible Man hosting. And initially at least, the fact that he has no trousers on kind of made me giggle. However then...
Scratching my invisible... But, getting back to my next question, sire.
Cool. Really spelling out the gag again.
I will not be beaten by a hunchback, pot-bellied, bulgy-eyed runt.
Whoa, cutting that line close there, Eddie. That's all we'll get of this latest villain cutscene. Again, pretty damn pointless. Before we enter another chemistry building sequence between Igor and Eva with old-time backing track to boot.
I got a woman as big as a house, yes, sir.
Problematic song choice too. If she eats me out of money, I can put her in the circus? Yeesh. Is this what he's gonna do to her then? Based on his behavior up till now, I wouldn't be surprised.
You shouldn't really worry about labels, though, because you may be a brain, but you have heart.
Credit where it's due, that's quite a modern message for this movie. Believe me, there's not many modern moments like this in the movie.
I would do it myself, but I'm all thumbs.
I got the thumbs on sale.
Hey, first good joke that didn't involve the Steve Buscemi rabbit. We got one. And surprisingly, actually, apparently I like, 4 or 5 jokes now? I swear the rest is ironic enjoyment.
Right.
The Igor-Eva relationship seems to be going well, but as soon as she's out the room, we get yet more of Igor whining. He has this big old monologue that, just like the opening narration, really just spells out all the internal conflicts we already basically knew. I guess it's not an internal conflict anymore, considering he's just saying it all out loud. Also, if you're going to just say it like this, at least have good dialogue for it.
But lucky for us, I'm evil, right?
Yeah, you know what, Igor? You really are. I just want to see the rabbit reign supreme by the end of this. Screw Igor. I think this is also just a really weirdly executed gang breaks up beat as well. I'm not 100% sure, which is always a great sign for super clear storytelling. We then have the German stereotype show up at the door, which of course Eva then sees Igor talking to, so she can get to her jealousy arc. And if you think her appearance is bad, she also speaks.
I came to see you.
Surprisingly, not even the worst stereotyping in this movie. We'll get there. Igor then leaves, then Eva walks out.
Is everything okay?
The German then looks at her like the weirdest thing ever. I don't know why you look so awkward, mate. You're pretty weird looking as well. In this Tim Burton Rip-Off universe, everyone looks pretty damn strange. I don't know why this Frankenstein woman's the standout suddenly.
He never looks at me that way.
Man, like girls who don't look like they've been put together at the
Junkyard.
Oh, she didn't even hesitate, man. That was cold.
You have a very ugly face.
Are all the insults in this written by an 8-year-old? You can't even call this insult humor, because that implies some kind of creativity behind it. They clearly needed to hit that "you're still an ugly monster" beat. They just couldn't think of a more creative way to do it than literally having the character say that. Igor is transported to Eddie Izzard's hot tub. I know the villain has a name, I can't remember it. But yes, it's time for a hot tub scene. Two dudes just chilling in a hot tub, 5 feet away. You know why.
Because they're not gay.
And once again, now that we have Igor and the villain finally talking to each other, having a luxury spa sequence and massages and the like, once again, it's an opportunity to completely lay out the plot in every single line.
To win the evil science fair, and you cha-cha-cha your way to a happy ending.
I guess it's clever to spell out the plan now, because the villain said it in a slightly ironic tone. Better still, he then tells Igor his own evil plan in that exact same tone. Eddie tries to have fun with it, but it is literally just an incredibly lazy spilling of his plan.
Long live the new king, me!
Everything this guy does for the rest of this movie, we found out right here. Even the overthrow the king bit that would have been a lot better as a sort of shock twist later on, you know? You can't even call it exposition. This guy is just reading his own storyline out at this point. And then it gets sinister.
Because I can get a woman to do absolutely anything.
Ooh, yeah, you can tell the Weinsteins produced this one alright. And to continue the theme of poor handling of the female presence in this movie, we then cut back to Eva wanting to look more beautiful for Igor. The resolution? The rabbit asks for some heavy-duty foundation and lipstick. That's the message I guess this movie wants to give. Alrighty then. Back in the spa with Dr. Schadenfreude, that's the name of the character, how could I forget? So memorable. There's a moment. He's found under a blanket rolling around with his Igor, and when challenged, he proceeds to describe his soft hands. Why? You know that's not going to be in good faith.
Jacqueline, Heidi, Jacqueline.
Oh, for God's sake. And so yes, now, Eva has put on some makeup now. Now she's acceptable for society. And now Igor suddenly thinks she's beautiful now because she's just put on some makeup. Who's funding this movie? Maybelline?
Maybe she's born with it.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
Are you a talent agent?
Ugh, the Weinstein connection just keeps getting worse. We have the moment Igor pronounces he has to tell her the truth because we're going for every misunderstanding cliche in the book here, and with the two now romantic leads separated, Igor being with the German boob woman and Eva at a nearby window, I think you can figure out what happens next. Yeah, here we go. It's a straight lift of the Shrek 2 window scene.
But don't you want to see your wife?
Fiona!
Don't you think you've already messed her life up enough?
Quite appropriately, this movie is a true Frankenstein's monster of so many different movies. Quality-wise, so far, I can't really call this movie heinous. It's just unoriginal and awfully dated.
This isn't even the sexiest me.
Okay, we've just gone past innuendo now at this point.
You're hideous.
And again, no effort to make that insult more interesting in any way. We're keeping to playground dialogue. The nuance of this movie is far and gone by this point. And now that we're well past nuance, let's bring the most egregious rip-off character back. back. The mayor returns. He also sounds like King Neptune as well. Just throw that in there too. They finally caught that Glichenstein is in fact dead. There's an incredibly awkwardly executed dialogue exchange where this is presented as a sick burn.
In the Igor recycling plant!
And then we're off. The ceremony, the big thing at the end, finally begins. It's what Igor's been leading up to this entire time. Let's go. Eva continues her whole I think I'm an actor routine with more unfunny lines about dressing rooms and whatnot.
A dressing room fit for a leading lady.
And over to the side characters, they're imprisoned. Again, this is just Shrek 2, and the timelines do line up for that one. So they go on to escape and go to grab Igor just incredibly easily. Any tension or conflict, gone immediately, and it's done straight through to a Toy Story 3 incineration pit. Wow, they actually have an Igor incinerator. I thought that was just a bad line in there.
Figures. Just when I decided I want to live.
The world building for this movie is both fascinating and so heinous if you think too hard about it. Time to go back to the old feeling sorry for myself routine with Igor now that they've been caught out, with more absolutely terrible dialogue to boot.
I tried to be someone different, but the world wouldn't let me.
Movie, why? At the same time you're saying your female character should wear makeup to be accepted by society? Come on.
This isn't you, Igor.
I think it is, man. He's been just this insufferable, self-pitying guy for most of the movie. Trying to turn this character's inner conflict around by explaining out loud to the audience isn't the one. When you've had a character act a certain way throughout the movie, having a character basically saying, sorry, he's not normally like this, won't resolve this problem.
It's over.
Fine, jump in the incinerator then. I do not vibe with this character at all. Of course, he doesn't end up doing that, and at the last minute decides to escape.
Reach, brain, reach!
Doesn't quite have the same ring as Run, Forrest, Run, but we'll add it to the collection of things stitched to this movie.
Wheels, don't fail me now!
And back to the ceremony, we have this presentation of the grand plan to blackmail all the cultures of the world, represented by... Oh no! These images were a choice. I'm not even sure this is a 2008 issue. Wow, that's really bad. We get more of Igor exclaiming the plot in no uncertain terms.
It's the beacon of evil on top of the royal castle.
Is it a beacon?
A pretty cool idea, though, as it turns out, the bad weather the town has been plagued with is caused by an evil invention up at the very top. Plus, though it still doesn't look great, at least there's some dynamic lighting going on. It faintly has an impression of, wow, this is beautiful. I think it's more the vibe than it is the actual animation execution. Then the Eddie Izzard villain does more of the whole "you're ugly" spiel to Eva.
You are an ugly monster.
Which finally unlocks her evil bone. I thought it was just that one Haiti character, but it turns out all these characters can only insult people with the wit of a 7-year-old. Still, she's boosted up to be evil finally. It's time for the real evil test where all the evil inventions come together to fight each other. Not to being the most evil, but the most strong, I guess. You could do this if you were a good person as well. You're beating up evil robots, right? Either way, Eva's take on this is, of course... Okay, that's the third act choice we've made. It makes sense plot-wise, but it's just kind of bad, man. And you think they're just gonna have a bit of it in for this lame joke, you know? But no, they pretty much do the entire song number interspersed across this entire scene. We get it. Please, stop. Don't give us another verse, please. You get a bit with the bunny trying to stop the weather machine before we hit the second verse of Tomorrow. Until eventually, yes. Well, you know, real life wins. Not because it's most evil, but because it's most muscle. I don't really think this plot worked, but sure, Dr. Doodle Izzard overthrows the king. I would be shocked at this moment, but the character had to spell out the entire plot 20 minutes ago. And yes, we've still got even more Annie to go. And it's all game over until...
Wait!
Igor steps in. Yep, here we go. Here's the message of the movie monologue bit.
Everyone has an evil bone in their body, but we choose whether or not to use it.
Absolutely exceptional writing. Thanks, movie.
I'm not evil. I'm evil.
Oh, for God's sake, I'm done. This is so... Oh, man, I hate this.
Well,
That was a short reign.
Hey, it's Liz Truss. And so, finally, I guess, the final resolution unfolds. Just that quickly. Starting off with the Malaria Community Theatre. I don't think I even need to say anything on that one. There's been so much bad taste in this movie, and that one, I think's accidental, as if they don't know what that is. But what else do we have in this epilogue finale of the best case scenario happy ending, huh?
Pick me up at 7. I'm gonna go home and shave.
Again, not even an innuendo at this point. Brian talks to a woman immediately swooned by him, as if to insinuate that even if you are a man who has no body parts except a brain in a jar, you will still be able to get a woman by the end of the movie. Meanwhile, the main woman has to put on makeup and do all of this jumping through hoops to be seen as valuable. What a lovely message to chuck in there. Every side character gets somebody. And just when you think it's all over, the worst bit then happens. This is legitimately the ending of the movie.
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone.
Oh dear God, no! No!
Blind orphans.
Yes, they got in one more blind orphan joke to sing I Can See Clearly Now That the Rain Is Gone, as one of the children literally doesn't know where they are. The movie ends on a joke about blind children.
Blind orphans.
Incredibly insensitive, and it copies the blind mice gag from the Shrek 2 American Idol bonus feature.
We can see clearly now, the rain has gone.
Except this feels way more targeted and worse. And that's legitimately how this movie clocks out. Roll credits, can you believe it?
Blind orphans?
MGM and the Weinstein Company's 2008 classic, Igor, everybody. A truly terrible movie with about 4 good jokes thrown in. And though I also kind of liked the look of the world, that's probably because it is a complete lift of Tim Burton's design aesthetics. So much of these characters feel like they're animated to be like stop motion. It's fully just mimicking the vibes of a more successful artist. As for the concept, I do actually kind of like it. It was a okay idea, just horrendously executed. The idea of evil scientists and Igors as a race is kind of fascinating in its own little way, and elements of how this world functions seems genuinely interesting, if only it wasn't plugged into an incredibly dated 2008 movie. Now honestly, the only thing I really care about, of course, is the damn immortal rabbit, which they never stop being immortal. He sacrifices himself in pain and death multiple times to make the plot go forwards, and now there's a happy ending. He will just continue to stand there, completely unanimated, as the world continues to collapse in upon itself. And on that privately funded budget of $26 million, they only made $30 million. And honestly, it very much shows how they only spent that much money on the animation. In the same year as WALL-E and the original Kung Fu Panda, it's quite astonishing that this was also a product of that year. What a ride, man. On that note, though, I'll end it off there. My name's been Daz. Happy spooky season, everybody. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video, and I shall see you in a little bit.